Some disasters you can see coming. Others arrive like a two-story wall of warm syrup moving at the speed of a galloping horse. On January 15, 1919, the north end of Boston was hit by a wave of molasses. Not a spill. It stood 15 feet high, traveled 35 miles per hour, and exerted enough force to lift a freight train off its tracks. Citation 3. This is the story of the Great Molasses Flood. To understand why Boston drowned in sugar byproduct, you need to understand World War I. Industrial alcohol was profitable, molasses could be distilled into industrial alcohol, and the Purity Distilling Company wanted money. Citation 3. So in 1915, they built a massive storage tank in a densely populated neighborhood. The tank measured 50 feet tall and 90 feet wide. That is roughly the size of a 4-story building lying on its side. They painted it brown, probably to hide the molasses stains that would inevitably appear. Though no one wrote that down, here is the first absurd detail. The tank was constructed poorly. Not slightly below code poorly. Genuinely dangerously poorly. The steel walls were too thin. The rivets were weak. When engineers later tested the metal, they found it was prone to cracking under stress. Citation 3. They also found that the tank had never been properly leak tested. The company essentially built a sugar bomb next to tenement housing and hoped for the best. For 4 years, the tank sat there. It leaked. Children came with buckets to collect the drips. Citation 4. No one demanded structural inspections. Instead, residents just accepted that a 50-foot tower of fermenting sugar occasionally wept onto their streets. The fermentation is important. Molasses does not just sit still, it bubbles, it produces carbon dioxide. And on a relatively warm January day, the temperature inside that tank increased the fermentation rate dramatically. Citation 3. The molasses expanded. The pressure built. The rivets began to pop. At approximately 12:40 p.m., the tank gave up. When the tank ruptured, it did not crack open quietly. It exploded with enough force that witnesses described the sound as a cannon shot or a machine gun burst. Citation 3. A nearby firehouse heard the roar and assumed an earthquake had hit. Citation 3. The rivets that had been holding the tank together shot outward like shrapnel. One witness recalled watching a child carried away by the wave. The child was found alive later, covered in sugar but breathing. The wave itself moved at 35 miles per hour. That is faster than most people can sprint. It was also traveling through city streets, which means it ricocheted off buildings, changed direction unpredictably, and compressed into narrower spaces with increased force. Citation 3. A 2-story wall of liquid moving at highway speeds through an urban environment. That is not a flood. The molasses wave destroyed the firehouse. It crumpled the fire engine inside. It knocked a building off its foundation. It lifted a rail car off the tracks and threw it aside. 21 people died. 150 were injured. Citation 3. But the numbers do not tell you how strange the deaths were. Most victims did not drown. They were crushed by the sheer weight and pressure of the wave. Others suffocated because the molasses filled their lungs. You cannot cough up molasses. It coats everything and refuses to leave. The strangest death might be the horses. Boston still used horses for transportation in 1919. Several horses were caught in the flood. They died stuck in place, completely immobilized by the syrup, unable to move their legs or lift their heads. Rescue workers found them frozen in position like sticky statues. Here is where the dark humor creeps in. After the wave passed, the city had a new problem. Approximately 2.3 million gallons of molasses were now spread across the north end. Citation 3. The stuff was everywhere. In basements, on walls, on people. Rescue workers could not walk without slipping. They could not pull victims out because their hands could not get a grip. Everything was sticky. Everything was brown. Everything smelled like sweet death. The cleanup took weeks. 87,000 man-hours of labor. Citation 3. Workers used salt water to try to dissolve the molasses. They used sand to try to absorb it. They used steam hoses to try to melt it. Nothing worked well. The molasses had mixed with groundwater and seeped into the harbor. Boston Harbor ran brown for months. Tourists reportedly thought the city had invented a new kind of tea. The legal aftermath was even stranger than the disaster. The Purity Distilling Company, immediately blamed anarchists. This was 1919. The Red Scare was in full swing. So the company suggested that someone had bombed the tank intentionally. There was zero evidence for this, but it sounded plausible to a frightened public. So the story ran in newspapers, citation 3. Then came the lawsuits. The company hired 147 lawyers. They argued that the tank had been built properly. They argued that the weather was unusual. They argued that the molasses had been sabotaged. They argued everything except the obvious truth. They built a death trap, and it killed people. One lawyer tried to argue that the tank had been struck by a meteor. No meteor was ever found, but the fact that someone said this in a courtroom with a straight face is beautiful. The trial lasted 6 years. That is longer than World War I lasted. In the end, the court found the company negligent. They paid out $600,000 in settlements, adjusted for inflation. That is roughly $10 million, citation 3. But money did not fix the stickiness. Residents reported that on hot summer days, the neighborhood still smelled of molasses for decades, into the 1970s. You could walk through the North End on a July afternoon and catch a faint whiff of sweet decay. So why is this funny? Because it is ridiculous. 21 people died. That is tragic. But the method of death was absurd. No one expects to be killed by dessert ingredients traveling at the speed of a car. No one expects to spend weeks scrubbing syrup off subway walls. No one expects a corporate lawyer to blame meteors. The contradiction between the sticky, childish substance and the genuine adult horror of the death toll creates cognitive dissonance. Your brain wants to laugh because molasses is funny. But then you remember the suffocation and the laughter catches in your throat. That is the dark humor. That is the point. The Great Molasses Flood also changed engineering standards. After the disaster, Massachusetts required all large storage tanks to be inspected by professional engineers. The state created new rules for structural testing. The tragedy directly led to modern building codes, citation 3. So every time you see a water tower or a gas tank and assume it is safe, thank Boston. Thank the 21 people who died, so that you do not have to worry about being crushed by a wave of corn syrup. Here is the final absurd detail. In 1995, a construction crew excavating the site found a single rivet from the original tank. Just one, buried in the dirt. They offered it to the Boston Historical Society. The society declined. They said they already had enough molasses flood artifacts. Reality is stranger than fiction. Subscribe for more weird dark facts.